25 days for Christmas shopping, 25 days to fill the stocking, 25 days for Christmas shopping, only got 25 more, only got 25 more.
Hi there, better get busy, Christmas is coming.
Shopgear.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
You're listening to the Sabrecast, brought to you by Better Live Than Dead. And now your hosts, Brayton Wilson and Ryan Wolfe.
And we welcome you to the Sabrecast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This is Season 2, Episode 8, entitled Guess Who's Back? We're back. Myself, Brayton Wilson, at BJ Wilson WGR, who joins me on the IndyCar Media Hotline. But before we say hello to Brayton, we want to let you know you can hear this podcast on BetterLiveThanDead.com, the NewGearNetwork.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. You can get the Sabrecast, all Better Live Than Dead, and all Gear Radio Network podcasts. Again, I am Ryan Wolfe at WolfeBLTD, and Brayton at Brayton Wilson at WGR. Buddy, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, Ryan. How's things with you out in Batavia way?
Cold, icy, and slippery.
Same here.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun out there in Western New York today. If you'll probably listen to this podcast after the storm has passed, but hopefully all of you are safe because Facebook is lighting up. I follow the video news service in Batavia, and there are a lot of accidents in the area. I saw a car blow through an intersection because he thought he could stop fast, and it didn't work, and he almost drove up the curb into a tree and then drove away because he did not. So that was a lot of fun, and I said, I'm not really supposed to be here today, and just came home.
Yeah, it's not so nice out here either. Things are starting to turn to slush, I guess, which is a good thing. But, when there's a lot of accidents going on out there, it's just sometimes better to just stay home and avoid all the crappy weather.
Absolutely. Stay home, make some comfort food, drink some coffee or hot chocolate, tea, whatever your fixings are, and enjoy the day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Now, Brayton, before we jump in to talk about the Sabres, we got to ask you how you're doing. The reason the podcast hasn't been happening the past couple of weeks, about a month now since we've had our last podcast, was because for those who don't know, I presume if you don't know, you don't follow Brayton on Twitter, which is you should be ashamed of yourself if that's the case. But Brayton tore his knee up, had his knee fixed. He's now back to work, back on the mend. And how is your knee doing lately?
Well, my knee is doing just fine. I've been able to work for the past 2 weeks now, so I'm feeling healthy. I'm walking again, which is really nice without any crutches or any help. So hopefully I'm on the quick road to recovery soon enough here, and I'll be back to doing physical activities.
You know how to do that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Bang, that's a shot right there.
Hey-o.
Being rude. Anyways, going to our three big things now, Brayton, brought to you by FortunePhoto.com. Immediate thoughts on the Buffalo Sabres. Now, Buffalo has won 3 of 14 games in November. The calendar has flipped over to December today, so that ugly month is past. It felt like the Sabres damn near hit rock bottom. Now, despite their failures to put together full games, Buffalo finds themselves out of an Atlantic Division playoff spot by only 1 point and a wild card spot by only 3 points. They have played better as of late, Brayton, but that 3 of 14 in the month of November after a very good start in October is a very, very disheartening sight to see with this squad.
Yeah, sure. It absolutely is disappointing to see them only get 3 wins in the month of November after such a hot start. However, right off the bat in the month, it was really rough to watch. It was a tough. It was just tough to follow along just because of how bad the team was playing, and especially against some teams where they probably should have gotten some easy wins. The game against Minnesota kind of speaks volumes because Minnesota at the time was the worst team in the NHL, and you pretty much make that team look like a team that's better than you are. And clearly the Minnesota Wild are a team that is starting to take the path of, I guess you could say tanking, even though they won't call it tanking, but they're starting to take that path where, they're on the down slope and they're likely going to have a top 5, top 10 pick this year in the draft. And, those are type of games that you should dominate in, and you should be able to win and have no worries, no problems with anything in that game. And Buffalo just looked so flat and just disinterested almost. And it it just spoke to the volumes of how badly this team was performing up until that point. Then they rebounded. They had, 5 or 6 straight nice games where they looked like they were the better team in some of those instances. They looked like they were putting up a majority of the high danger chances, getting quality scoring chances. And unfortunately, the scoring hasn't been able to come through for this team. The scoring has been down still, and that's hurt them as well. So, hey, you were able to get a nice win on Friday against Toronto. You were able to get a win in Florida, which was a good win. And other games, games against Boston, both games against Toronto, and even the game against Calgary were very strong performances all around from the team. But, they've got to be better. If they want to seriously contend for a playoff spot, they either A, need to make a move to get some scoring, or B, they've got to find a way to put the puck in the back of the net. And, Friday was nice. They got 6 goals, but there's got to be more consistent performances than that. And if they can't, then they're going to fall behind again, and they're going to fall out of playoff contention. So they got a lot to work on as the calendar now flips to December, heading towards the end of the calendar year. But, I think that they've done, fairly well in the last 5 or 6 games. And if they can continue to play similar to how they have that way, I think December is going to be a better month.
Now, we've had the opportunity to see Ralph Krueger coach this team for 27 games, the ups, downs, lefts and rights, even if you want to look at it that way. How have you felt about Ralph Krueger's coaching through these 27 games and the somewhat questionable decisions he may have and continues to be making with the lineup?
Well, I think that it certainly has been up and down. With the lack of changes early on in the year, even though they were having success, then injuries started to become a factor. And, there are still some things that we would probably all like to see. We'd probably like to see Jeff Skinner back with Jack Eichel. We'd probably like to see Sam Reinhart try to run his own line, whether it's on the wing or at center. I would prefer it on the wing, but, and then some other combinations that probably need to be changed. Obviously the right thing to do was to split up the McCabe Ristolainen pairing. That's been done, and I think that's been done to succession because both players look better than they have since being away from each other. But it's difficult because I think there's been some very positive things with Krueger. It seems like, especially as of late, this team seems to be in every game and they seem to be giving a 100% effort. It's just that sometimes they have some defensive breakdowns or some lapses in their game, and those mistakes are ending up in the back of the net. Now, I think that the one thing that is starting to show that I think is the right move is that Linus Cellmark is now becoming that number one goalie. He got the start in Boston, and he got 3 starts, before. He got 3 straight starts, and as of late, he's been getting more action in net over Carter Hutton. And I think that's the right call. I think he's been better in net. He's looked more solid. The team appears to play better in front of Linus Cellmark. And, we'll see how things develop here going on out. But I think that Linus Cellmark is starting to firmly become your number one starting goalie for this Buffalo Sabres team, which I think is the right move. And, everything else has kind of got to figure itself out. But I've been pretty impressed with what Krueger's been able to do with the squad in terms of, a motivational standpoint. That was the thing with Krueger that was a positive, was how motivational he is and what he was able to do to get these guys at another level and get them riled up or whatever. But, it's a process still for the Sabres team, and Krueger's absolutely going to have, the rest of this season to figure it out. And we'll see what other changes are made to the lineup to try and bolster this team, which I think are needed before the end of the season, because, you definitely don't want December to get away from you, because I think if you do that, then you're really putting yourself in a bigger hole when it comes to contending for a playoff spot. And if Jason Botterill or Krueger or, they can't figure something out, that's just going to be more frustrating hockey in Western New York for a while here.
Now, you totally took away my second of the 3 big things, so I'll just run over it really quick. I did have some stats here. You mentioned Ullmark's been starting a lot as of late. He started 5 of the last 7 games, and the only 2 games he didn't start were the back end of back-to-back. So clearly, if nothing else, he may not have usurped the number one role, but he's currently getting the opportunity to take that and run with it. And his 6-5-2 record is tied for 31st among goaltenders who have played in 10 plus games, and his 3.00 goals allowed average is 35th. and he has a .911 save percentage, which ties him for 23rd among those goaltenders who have played in 10 games. So his stats may not look super sexy right now, but like you said, Brayton, it definitely does seem like the Sabres play a little more spirited behind, or with Linus Ullmark behind him. It feels like they have a better chance to be in the game. We know we've enjoyed Carter Hutton over the last season and change here, but definitely you've seen some mental mistakes, some mental lapses that have kind of led Buffalo into a bad spot. So it seems like with the team struggling, those 3 wins in 14 games, as we mentioned, it definitely seems like a good opportunity now to see what you have in Linus Ullmark. And the one thing I want to say about Ralph Krueger is he has had some difficulty with this roster, and understandably so. I mean, right now, the current roster, as I see here on hockeyreference.com, their average age is 26.3, which is below the league average. So you clearly can see that they have a young team. But the other thing about it is that there's a lot of important guys on this roster that are injured. You've got Rasmus Dahlin currently out indefinitely while in concussion protocol. He wasn't playing up to Rasmus Dahlin rookie season levels at this point in time, but he was getting better. He seemed to be figuring out his role in Ralph Krueger's system. You've got Kyle Oposo, who's out indefinitely with his 4th concussion in less than 3 years. I don't suspect the Sabres will see him back for a long time, but he was one of the Sabres' better possession forwards. For better or for worse, Vladimir Sobotka, he's out for an extended period of time, was placed on IR, had knee surgery, and they put the emphasis on long term in terms of talking about the injury. And then you have Tage Thompson, who came up and played 1 game and appeared to dislocate his shoulder, which put him on the shelf for a handful of weeks, I believe a month, if not more. So again, there's been a lot of shifting and shaking in the lineup. The Buffalo Sabres have a ton of defensemen that they've been kind of shuffling in and out. There's not really a lot of guys they can call up from Rochester because either they're already here or they don't have the capability to call them up at this point in time. So it's certainly a situation where, they're playing 11-7 a lot, where they'll play, Zach Bogosian will play right wing, or you get, Colin Miller playing, or whoever it may be ends up playing on that 4th line, or they'll double shift guys. But it's something that's kind of grown frustrating as well, Brayton, because the Buffalo Sabres go out, they bring Colin Miller in. He's been a healthy scratch a bunch of times. You see guys like Rasmus Ristolainen still struggling. There's rumblings that he could be dealt, but it seems as if Jason Botterill might still be a little too gun-shy to make a move that will likely improve the team. I mean, it may be an addition by subtraction where, yes, you may take a step or 2 back, but ultimately you'll take 3 steps forward because you're able to elevate guys who are ready for a bigger role. And as we've seen this year so far, guys like Rasmus Ristolainen, guys like Jake McCabe have really struggled on the back end, and it's not helped this team out at all.
No, and there are certain guys that are getting minutes that shouldn't be, and there are certain players that probably should be getting more minutes that aren't. And I don't know if that's just based on a leadership standpoint, or if that's just, maybe it's a personal issue, or maybe it's an off ice issue that they're not getting more ice time. But I mean, it's something's got to get figured out here fast. And especially with these injuries, the Sabres need help up front. And with the boatload of defensemen that you have, you got to make some sort of move, whether it's a trade or something. Go claim someone off waivers if you have to in order to get some help. But this team right now just, they're not getting the offensive production that they really would like to have. I think they're getting better at that, but at the same point, you need the goal scoring and you need the production and the puck going into the net and getting those stats to obviously win games. I know that sounds stupid and cliche, but this team has had problems scoring. This team has had problems finding the back of the net. It's something that I think could be correctable, but another problem that comes up is salary cap space. The Sabres don't have any projected salary cap space, so that's something that they got to have to deal with. But long-term injury reserves certainly will help a little bit, but they've got to find ways to move some money out. And until they do that, it's going to be very much the same, and that's not going to be pleasant to watch. But Jason Botterill's got to make a move, and it's difficult when he's put himself in a cap spot like that.
I'm looking at the stats here too. One of the guys that's been very impressive since being called up is Rasmus Asplund, 22 years old, making his NHL debut in the month of November. In 9 games, he has a 52.3% Fenwick 4 rating. That puts him 5th best on the Buffalo Sabres. He's looked very good in his own zone. He seems to be very comfortable. He's starting in the defensive zone 55.2% of the time this month, only playing a little over 11 minutes in 13 seconds a game. Actually, 11 minutes, 13 seconds on the dot. I'm sorry. He's looked very, very good in his recall. And, I mean, obviously you need guys in that bottom 6 who can score. He has not yet scored, had a couple great chances. But the other thing that I'm looking at here, because obviously we've seen the Buffalo Sabres kind of struggle here and there with possession, is I know we've beaten that dead horse about faceoffs so many times for so many years. But when you look at the Buffalo Sabres right now, they've got Oposo, who's taken 18 faceoffs this year. Curtis Lazar's taken 7. I mean, your higher up guys that have taken more faceoffs, Sobotka, who is out probably for a very long time, if not the rest of the season. Evan Rodriguez, who's in and out of the lineup. Zemgus Girgensons, who has only taken 28 faceoffs. Jack Eichel's been your big guy. He's won 48.5%. And then the other big one has been Johan Larsson, who's won 45.2%. But again, I mean, you can't draw possession. You can't gain possession if you can't get the puck and get out of your zone with it. So if you can't win those faceoffs because you're putting, Marcus Johansson has taken 164 faceoffs and won 39% of them. That's not great at all. That may be something down the road where they have to go out and pick up a veteran centerman who plays, third line center, fourth line center, whatever it may be, that goes out with a Johan Larsson or goes out with whoever the third line might be. And either that or you start entrusting Casey Middlestat more to take faceoffs. I mean, he's won 47.9% of his faceoffs, taken a little over, I think, about 150, 160 faceoffs this year. So again, things like that where you start to kind of split hairs and go, okay, well, which guys are good at possession? Why are they not possessing the puck well enough? What's the problem? It seems like too, Brayton, the one thing I did notice that the Sabres have kind of broken away from, but as the month has gone on, but it felt like earlier in the month when the Sabres started to get hurt and beat up and they were playing a lot of younger guys, they kind of reverted back to dump and chase hockey, which this team is just, it's a life sucker for this team with all the young talent and the fast talent that they have to dump and chase every shift.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the way that this team is playing right now. I mean, it's I don't think it's certainly the brand that they want to play, but the circumstances that they're facing right now, they kind of have to try and adjust what however and whenever they can. It certainly doesn't help that they're missing some of their best players like Rasmus Asplund. Obviously, I think he struggled this year, but I still think he is their best defenseman in terms of just puck moving ability and offensive production. And I just think that until bodies get healthy and until maybe some help comes along in terms of a trade, we're going to have these consistent performances of, hey, at least they're working really hard and they look like, they look spirited. But they came out on the short end because either their power play caved in again or, the power play didn't produce or their penalty kill caved in. So, I mean, hopefully something comes along, some good news comes along for this team. But, these performances against the teams like Toronto and teams like, teams like Boston and how they've been playing really well against them have been great. But, they're going to be playing New Jersey on Monday night back at KeyBank Center. And that's one of the worst teams in the NHL. They've struggled all season. They can't get anything going. And you beat them 7-2 in the home opener of the year. You've got to be able to take advantage of a team like that and really put a hurting on them and not show them like, hey, we're a vulnerable team as well. You go out there and you try and put up the best performance you can, and you're expected to win those games. You are a better team than the New Jersey Devils right now. So, I mean, if they go out and put up a dud.
Looking at the roster right now, according to Cap Friendly, the Sabres have a little over $1.1 million in cap space available. But then when you look at the non-roster forwards, guys who are either overseas in juniors or in the minors, right. I mean, you're probably not going to call up Scott Wilson. There's a reason why he's in Rochester. He's going to stay there. The next guy up, honestly, is probably Andrew Ogilvy because you've got C.J. Smith injured. I don't recall right now about Remy Ellie. I don't remember
Remieli is also injured too.
That's what that's what I thought. Yeah. So and the thing about Rochester too, Brayton, is that they are 8-0, 1-1 in their last 10 games. So they're 8-0-2 in their last 10, and they're 13-3-4 on the season with 30 points in 20 games. Only 1 point behind the Toronto Marlies for first in the North Division. So they've been incredible this year. And it seems like in Rochester, at least, every time someone gets hurt, it's always the next man up. And that next man up in Rochester right now has been Andrew Ogilvy, who last year, his season was cut short because of a concussion. I believe it was concussion. And he didn't play a ton of time. But this year, right now, in 20 games, he has 16 points, 9 goals, 7 assists. And he has blossomed in an expanded role. And then you see guys like Brett Murray, who knew if Brett Murray was going to even make the roster, make the team out of camp, ends up he's putting 14 points in 15 games. I mean, Scott Wilson, 13 points in 18 games. Guys that you didn't expect to step up have been stepping up down in Rochester and doing pretty damn good. So things look well in Rochester. Things don't look so well in Buffalo, but I would presume Rochester will get much better once these younger players go down. But I got to think, Brayton, if guys like Rasmus Asplund continue to excel in Buffalo, he's got to probably start putting up points at some point in time. But if he continues to control possession and assist that third, fourth line in pinning other teams back and allowing those first and second lines to get in and get some points on the board, then maybe he stays. But I mean, the Buffalo Sabres have been on the offensive side of things, and this brings us to our third big thing of the podcast, with Eichel continuing to set the pace. No surprise that the Sabres' first line continues to carry the water for everybody. And the stats are actually pretty impressive, and I'll start from the bottom up right now. You've got Sam Reinhart, 9 goals, 11 assists, 20 points in 27 games. Not bad at all. And then you look at Victor Olofsson, 10 goals, 10 assists, 20 points in 27 games. Struggled a bit in the month of November. He found himself bouncing around the lineup, but ended the month back on the top line with Jack Eichel. He's third in rookie points. He leads NHL rookies with 10 goals and tied for fourth in assists. And then there's Jack Eichel, who's playing out of his mind. 16 goals, 19 assists. That's 35 points in 27 games. He is tied for seventh in the National Hockey League in points, tied for fifth in goals, and tied for 13th in assists. So again, you can't expect that to stick up all season. I mean, Eichel is at this point of his career probably easy to count on him to be a point-a-game player, but at some point in time, Brayton, we're a broken record. We've said this for years. You have to get some secondary scoring, whether it's from the second line, the third line, the fourth line, the defense. Someone else has to put goals in the net if you want to win and be a playoff team.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe that is, like I referenced earlier, splitting things up a little bit between, Jack and Sam, putting Sam on the second line. Because, I mean, even Sam Reinhart has hit a little bit of a drought with his goal scoring. So, I mean, one way to maybe get his game back going again and to get a little spark in his game is to put him on a line and tell him, hey, this is your line now. Like, run your line, and, we expect you to be able to produce. Maybe do something like that in order to get some more depth production. Maybe, put Jeff Skinner back with Eichel, but at the same point, you kind of try and distribute other ways of scoring. It's something that I think the Sabres are still trying to figure out, and I think I think the team itself was surprised with the start that they had. I don't know if they expected to jump out of the gate and play like they did. And then I think at the same point, they were also surprised with the month of November that they had, where they fell off the map. But I think if they can even things out, I think if they can kind of split December, I think they'll still be okay. And I mean, I was talking with Mike Zeisberger from NHL.com yesterday on our WGR, and he brought up a great point, and I'll bring it up here. There's been, I mean, how leagues talk about parity. There's been so much parity in the NHL this year, just with how many teams have struggled off the bat and how many teams have surprised many teams. I mean, you look at the Atlantic Division standings right now, and teams like Tampa Bay and Toronto, they're down in the standings. They've only got, 30 points, 28 points, 29 points, 27 points. I mean, Tampa Bay just lost again yesterday, and they're sixth in the division right now. Montreal, Buffalo, Toronto, they're all ahead of Tampa Bay, which is absolutely surprising. And the Sabres are fourth right now, but still, it's just there are other teams out there that have just been so surprising with how badly things have gone for them, or on the flip side, with how surprisingly well things have gone for them. So again, 27 games in, there's still, 50 some odd games left to go in the season. It's just things are still kind of being put together for the Sabres this year. But if they can kind of figure things out and find some consistency in their game and manage to even split November with wins and losses or whatnot, I think that they'll still be in a decent position. And hopefully by then, by the time that January comes around, maybe they'll get some help, maybe via trade or some injuries that, some healthy bodies coming back. But there's still some things that are good about this team. And I tweeted it out yesterday. There's still some hope with this team. And I think that's still a fair assessment that they could still be contenders by the time that December comes to an end into January.
Now looking ahead, first off, I want to mention here, you talked about Montreal being bad. I saw a stat here from Sportsnet Stats at SN Stats as you were talking about it. Montreal's lost 7 straight games for the first time since October 2017. They have not lost 8 in a row since 1939-40. Wow. So they are historically bad at this point almost.
Yeah.
But looking ahead though, Brayton, to December, and we can wrap up the podcast on this one. December, as we've said, will tell the story for the Sabres. They play 14 games, which is a 28-point swing. They have 5 games against division opponents. If Buffalo can get to right the ship in the month of December, even if they go 500, they need to do something to start collecting points at a rapid pace. It appears that toward the end of November, they were able to kind of start getting the ship righted. But if they can play themselves back into the thick of the playoff hunt with a good December heading into 2020 and kind of take some pressure off, because obviously it appears that if you start to put a ton of pressure on this team, they might just collapse. So we'll keep an eye on the Buffalo Sabres, Brayton, but the month of December is a very big month to see how the team responds after a bad month of November, good end to the month of November, and I guess we'll just see what happens.
That's all we can do. That's all we can do anytime that things like this kind of happen. I mean, we've been so accustomed to this team with their struggles that they've had over the years, and hopefully it's not like last year where, after the 10-game win streak in November, and then at the end of the year, they had just that epic collapse to fall out of playoff contention completely. Hopefully nothing like that happens again in May. And again, there's still plenty of time to bounce back for this season, and I think they certainly can. They just got to find a way to put things together and kind of come together as a group and figure out how they can manage to put some points in the standings and pucks in the net and get some wins and stay in the playoff hunt and stay in contention. Because I think if they can figure it out, I think they'll be just fine.
Absolutely. And looking at the month of December, again, they play the Devils at home, Calgary on the road, Vancouver on the road, Edmonton on the road, St. Louis at home, Nashville at home, Islanders on Long Island. They're in Toronto, in Philadelphia. They face the Kings at home, Ottawa on the road, Boston at home, Boston on the road, and then Tampa at home to close out the 2019 portion of the season. So, again, things are looking good, or at least looking up, I should say. They're looking, I guess, good because it's like the Bills. I just kind of got lost there. I'm sorry. It's like the Bills.
It's looking positive.
Where you thought to yourself, "Hey, things are going good," but And now you look at the standings and you're like, okay, so the Sabres literally just won 3 games in the month, and they're a point out of the division playoff spot, not a wild card,
right.
A division playoff spot because everyone else has struggled. But you cannot continue to predict that or project that other teams will struggle enough that you can sneak in. You're going to, at some point in time, they're going to turn the Jets on. So you've got to be able to either do it before them or keep pace with them because you don't want to get in that hole where you're chasing, 10 points out come February, March.
Absolutely. I mean, it looks fine from a divisional standpoint. And when you look at the wild card part of the standings, it doesn't look promising there. But I mean, again, some teams have played more games than you have. Other teams have played less. But just in the month of December, find a way to play average or find a way to break even in the month. And I think come January 1st, when it hits 2020, I think they'll still be in a fine position. And then from there, again, it's another, okay, let's figure out a way to get even or find a way to even get hot or something like that. The team is doing just fine. They're doing okay right now, especially over the last 5-6 games where they actually have started to turn things around a little bit. But find a way to take that next step, find a way to be a little bit better. And I think they'll still be in a good spot come, January 1st.
So with that being said, Brayton, we can wrap this bad boy up. It's good to be back. Good to have you back. Good to be back on the airwaves. This has been the Sabrecast Season 2 episode number 8. I am Ryan Wolfe at Wolfe BLTD. Brayton is at BJ Wilson WGR. And as always, we are the Sabrecast.
And you are not.
We'll catch you sometime very soon. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. And as always, go Sabres.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.